I stared at my bank statement in disbelief as the numbers swam before my eyes. $8,200 gone overnight. My hands trembled as I confronted my 12-year-old nephew standing in my kitchen. I just used your card for snacks. Zach shrugged, not even looking up from his phone. When I called my sister Allison, her response cut deeper than the financial wound. Kids will be kids, Jody. Why are you making such a big deal? My own mother took her side, as always. I said nothing, but something inside me finally snapped. That night, I quietly froze every card tied to their accounts. At 7 in the morning, my phone exploded with my sister's panicked call. I've always been the responsible one in our family. At 34, I've built a successful career as a financial advisor at Morgan Wealth Management in downtown Portland. The irony isn't lost on me that I help others secure their financial futures while my own family has been bleeding me dry for years. My sister Allison is 38, but acts like she's still in college. After her divorce from Tyler 3 years ago, I stepped in to help her and the kids, Zach, who's 12, and Megan, 15, get back on their feet. What was supposed to be temporary assistance turned into a seemingly endless financial commitment. You're so good with money, Jody, Allison would say, and I'm just trying to give the kids some stability. That line worked on me for too long. I paid for their security deposit and first month's rent at a nice apartment in a good school district. Then came the emergency car repairs, the school supplies, the medical bills not covered by insurance. Before I knew it, I was covering their cell phone plan, supplementing their groceries, and helping with utilities just until things turn around. I added Allison as an authorized user on one of my credit cards strictly for emergencies. The boundaries were clear, or so I thought. Growing up, our family dynamic was always skewed. Allison was the pretty one, the charming one, the one who could talk her way out of anything. I was the studious, responsible daughter who followed the rules. Our father worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, while our mother, Sandra, doted on Allison, always making excuses for her behavior. Allison just feels things more deeply than you do, Mom would tell me when I complained about the unfairness. You're the strong one. You can handle it. Those patterns never changed. Even now, Mom lives across town in a small condo I helped her buy after Dad passed away 5 years ago. She still defends Allison at every turn. Last month, I met Ryan at a charity event for the youth financial literacy program I volunteer with. He's kind, thoughtful, and as a therapist, he noticed things about my family dynamics that I'd normalized. You know that's financial abuse, right? He said gently after I told him about covering Allison's car payment for the 3rd time this year. You're allowed to set boundaries, Jody. That doesn't make you a bad sister or aunt. His words had been percolating in my mind, but I kept making excuses. Their family. The kids shouldn't suffer because Allison can't manage money. What kind of person would I be if I just cut them off? But yesterday changed everything. After discovering the $8,200 charge, I spent hours combing through my statements. What I found made my stomach turn. This wasn't an isolated incident. There had been a pattern building. $50 at GameStop, $75 at Nike, $120 at Apple. Small enough charges that I hadn't immediately noticed among my regular expenses, but they added up to thousands over the past year. I felt like such a fool. The very red flags I warned my clients about had been waving in my face, and I'd been colorblind to them because they came from family. The morning after discovering the $8,200 charge, I drove to Allison's apartment with printouts of all the unauthorized transactions. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Ryan had offered to come with me for moral support, but this was a conversation I needed to have one-on-one with my sister. When I arrived, Allison was still in her pajamas at 11 in the morning, scrolling through her phone while Zach played video games in the living room. The apartment I was largely paying for was a mess. Takeout containers on the counter, laundry piled on the couch. No sign of Megan, who was probably at school, the responsible one of the household. We need to talk, I said, placing the stack of papers on the kitchen table. Allison barely looked up. Can it wait? I had a late night. $8,200, Allison. Plus all of these. I spread out the transaction records. This has been going on for months. That got her attention. She glanced at the papers and then rolled her eyes. Oh, please don't be so dramatic. So Zach used your card for a few things. You have plenty of money. A few things, My voice rose despite my effort to stay calm. He bought a gaming computer, a VR headset designer, clothes and gift cards that were probably resold. That's theft, Allison. Zach wandered into the kitchen, drawn by our raised voices. At 12, he was already taller than his mother, with the beginning of teenage attitude perfected to an art form. Zach, did you use my credit card to buy all this stuff? I asked directly. He shrugged, opening the refrigerator. Mom said it was fine. You always help us out anyway. I turned to Allison in disbelief. You told him it was okay to use my card without asking me. Don't interrogate him like he's a criminal, Allison snapped. He's just a kid. Besides, you're the one who's always saying you want to help with the kids. This is helping. Helping is buying school supplies or contributing to college funds. This is stealing. Stealing, Allison laughed harshly. From family, that's rich. Especially coming from you. Zach grabbed a soda and started back toward his room. We're not done talking, Zach, I called after him. What you did was wrong. Using someone's credit card without permission is serious. Whatever, he muttered, not even turning around. See what you're doing, Allison hissed. Making him feel bad about himself. He's been through enough with the divorce. I took a deep breath. Allison, he needs to understand there are consequences to his actions. This isn't helping him. Oh, here comes St. Jody with her financial wisdom. Allison mocked. Not everyone can be perfect like you. Some of us are just trying to survive and give our kids a decent life. By teaching them it's okay to steal. It's not stealing when it's family, Allison insisted. We share everything. That's what family does. You have more than enough money with your fancy job and no kids to support. I tried a different approach. I want to help you and the kids, but this isn't sustainable. I can help you create a budget, maybe look into financial assistance programs. I don't need your charity or your condescending budget tips. Allison cut me off. What I need is a sister who doesn't bean count every little thing she does for family. Just then my phone rang. It was our mother. Allison already told me you're making a fuss about money again, Mom said instead of hello. Honestly, Jody, your sister is a single mother doing her best. Of course, Allison had called her the moment she knew I was coming over. The familiar triangulation was so predictable it would be laughable if it weren't so painful. Mom, Zach stole thousands of dollars from me. Don't use that word, Mom chided. He's just a child. Children make mistakes. Remember when you were 10 and took $5 from my purse for the school book fair? I couldn't believe she was comparing a $5 childhood indiscretion to $8,200 in credit card fraud. But then again, I could absolutely believe it. After I hung up, Allison had a smug look on her face. See, even Mom thinks you're overreacting. I gathered my papers. This has to stop, Allison. I'm canceling the card I gave you and removing you as an authorized user. You need to figure out your finances without using me as your personal ATM. Fine, Allison said coldly. And when the kids and I are homeless, you can explain to everyone how you abandoned your family over a few dollars. As I turned to leave, I overheard Zach in the hallway talking to his friend on the phone. Yeah, Aunt Jody's being a total witch about the money thing. Mom says she owes us anyway because she stole our inheritance from Grandpa. I froze. Our father had left a modest life insurance policy that was split evenly between Allison and me. I'd used my portion for a down payment on my condo while Allison had blown through hers in 6 months on a luxury vacation and shopping sprees. That she was now rewriting that history to paint me as a thief to her children was the final straw. After leaving Allison's apartment, I sat in my car for nearly 20 minutes, too shaken to drive. The inheritance lie was ringing in my ears. What else had Allison told her children about me? How long had she been poisoning their minds? When I finally got home, I did something I should have done months ago. I pulled my complete credit reports. What I found turned my simmering anger to ice-cold fury. There were 3 credit cards I didn't recognize. One from Capital One, another from Discover, and a store card for Nordstrom. All opened within the past year, all with balances near their limits, and all with my social security number. Someone had opened credit cards in my name, and I knew exactly who that someone was. I called Grace Chen from work, who specialized in financial fraud cases. Even though it was Saturday, she picked up on the 3rd ring. Identity theft by family members is more common than people realize, Grace said after I explained the situation. And it's harder to address because victims often feel guilty about pressing charges against relatives. "What are my options?" I asked, my voice hollow. "You have two paths," she replied. "You can report the fraud to the credit card companies as identity theft, which will likely trigger a criminal investigation. Or you can accept the debt as yours and try to work out a payment plan. But Jody, I have to tell you, the second option rarely ends well. From what you've described, your sister has shown no willingness to change her behavior." I thanked Grace and promised to think it over. But first I needed more information. Using the online account access information from the statements I logged into each of the fraudulent cards, the purchase history told a story very different from the one Allison had been feeding me about struggling to make ends meet. High-end restaurants, designer clothing, spa treatments, weekend getaways to Cannon Beach, all while I was helping her pay utilities because she claimed she couldn't afford to keep the lights on. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "How did it go with your sister? Want to talk?" I hesitated, then called him. I needed a perspective from someone outside the twisted dynamics of my family. "You need to protect yourself," Ryan said firmly after I'd laid it all out. "This isn't just about money anymore. She's committing fraud, damaging your credit, and turning her children against you. Those are deliberate choices, Jody. But if I press charges, what happens to Zach and Megan?" "That's a valid concern," he acknowledged. "But consider this. What lesson are they learning now? That it's okay to steal. That there are no consequences for hurting people who love you. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them face the results of their actions." After we hung up, I made a pot of coffee and spread all the evidence across my dining table. The original credit card statements, the fraudulent accounts, the transaction histories. The fuller picture was even worse than I'd initially realized. The total financial damage, including the recent $8,200 charge, exceeded $20,000. I decided to make one more attempt at resolving this directly with Allison. I called and asked her to meet me at a coffee shop nearby, neutral territory. She arrived 45 minutes late, making a show of being inconvenienced. I got straight to the point. "I know about the credit cards you opened in my name, Allison." Her expression flickered just slightly before settling into indignation. "I don't know what you're talking about." I placed the statements on the table between us. 3 cards, over $12,000 in debt that I never authorized. That's identity theft and fraud. It's a felony. Those could be your cards. You probably just forgot about them. You have so many. I stared at her, wondering how I could share DNA with someone capable of such blatant lies. "Allison, I have the IP addresses of where these accounts were created. They trace back to your apartment. I have purchase records showing items delivered to your address. Items I saw in your apartment today." She shifted strategies. "Okay, fine. I was desperate, Jody. The kids needed things for school. Their father is behind on child support. What was I supposed to do?" "Spa weekends at the coast were essential expenses." Her face hardened. "You've always been jealous of me. Just because your life is boring and empty doesn't mean the rest of us should suffer." "I'm giving you one chance to make this right," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You're going to sign a repayment agreement. You're going to stop telling the kids I stole their inheritance. And you're going to get financial counseling." Allison laughed. "Or what? You'll press charges against your own sister. Turn me into the police. Go ahead. See how Mom feels about that. See how your precious niece and nephew feel when their mother has a criminal record because their aunt cares more about money than family." "This isn't about money. It's about trust. It's about respect. No, it's about control. It always has been with you. You love having us dependent on you. Makes you feel important." She stood up. "Do what you have to do, Jody. But don't expect to ever see the kids again if you go down this road." As Allison walked away, my phone dinged with a notification. It was a social media alert. I'd been tagged in a post. It was from our mutual friend Diane, someone I'd known since high school. Some people are so obsessed with money they'd rather see their own family struggle than share their good fortune. True colors always show, eventually. My hands shook as I saw the comments below. Several of our friends expressing shock and disappointment in me. Allison had been busy spinning her narrative, painting me as the villain. I drove home in a daze, a strange calm settling over me. For years, I'd been the family ATM, the reliable safety net, the responsible sister who would always be there to clean up messes. The role had been exhausting, thankless, and now I realized enabling. It was time to stop the cycle. That evening, I made a list of everything I needed to do to protect myself financially, legally, and emotionally. The financial advisor in me took over, approaching the situation like I would for a client facing financial abuse. First, I called my bank and credit card companies to report the fraud and freeze all my accounts. I explained that I needed new cards with new numbers issued immediately. I removed Allison as an authorized user on all accounts. Next, I placed a credit freeze with all 3 major credit bureaus to prevent any new accounts from being opened in my name. I filed identity theft reports and disputed all the fraudulent charges. Then I did something that would set off the nuclear option. I froze the joint checking account I had created to help Allison with household expenses. The account I regularly deposited money into for bills and necessities. The account I knew she relied on completely. I knew what would happen next. Without access to my money, Allison would panic. She would lash out. The comfortable financial cushion she'd come to expect would suddenly vanish, forcing her to face reality for perhaps the first time in her adult life. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. I understood it would cause temporary hardship, but continuing as we were would only perpetuate the damage. To my finances, to our relationship, and most importantly to Zach and Megan, who were learning all the wrong lessons about money responsibility and how to treat people who love. I called my friend Hannah, who worked as a family law attorney. I need advice on documenting financial fraud by a family member, I explained, and I'm concerned about the welfare of my niece and nephew. Hannah walked me through creating a comprehensive file: dates, amounts, copies of all statements, screenshots of account creation, details delivery, confirmations to Allison's address. If this goes to court, you'll need everything organized and readily accessible, she advised. Do you think it will come to that? I asked. I hope not, Hannah said carefully. But from what you've described, your sister doesn't seem willing to acknowledge the seriousness of her actions. Sometimes legal consequences are the only wake-up call that works. After hanging up, I checked my credit score. The damage was worse than I'd anticipated. My once excellent credit had dropped nearly 100 points due to the high utilization on the fraudulent cards and missed payments I hadn't known about. The credit score I'd spent years building, the one that had helped me buy my condo and secure low interest rates, was now in jeopardy because of my own sister's betrayal. I spent the rest of the evening creating a financial recovery plan with clearly defined milestones and non-negotiable boundaries. 1. No more direct financial assistance to Allison. Period. 2. All fraudulent accounts must be closed and removed from my credit. 3. Allison must acknowledge the theft and agree to repayment terms. 4. She must attend financial counseling as a condition of any future relationship. 5. She must correct the lies she's told the children about me. The plan was firm but fair. It offered a path to reconciliation, but one that required accountability. The next day, I decided to reach out to Megan directly. At 15, she was old enough to understand some of the situation, and I worried about how she was processing everything. I texted her to see if she'd meet me for ice cream after school. To my relief, she agreed. We met at a small ice cream shop near her school, away from Allison's watchful eye. Is everything okay? Aunt Jody Megan asked as we sat with our ice cream. Mom's been saying some weird stuff about you. I chose my words carefully. Your mom and I are having some disagreements about money right now, but I want you to know that no matter what happens between your mom and me, I love you and Zach very much. Megan stared down at her melting ice cream. Is it true that Zach stole money from you? Did your mom tell you that? No, Megan said quietly. Zach did. He was bragging about it to his friends. He said Mom told him it was okay because you owe us money or something. My heart sank. That's not true, Megan. I don't owe your family money. In fact, I've been helping your mom financially since the divorce. Megan nodded slowly. I kind of figured. Mom's always saying we're broke, but then she comes home with new stuff. She looked up, her eyes suddenly fierce. I told Zach it was wrong. We got in a huge fight about it. He called me a goody-goody and said I don't understand how things work. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You understand exactly how things work, Megan. What Zach did wasn't okay and your mom shouldn't have told him it was. I'm really sorry, Aunt Jody, she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. I feel so embarrassed about all of this. None of this is your fault, I assured her. Not one bit. You have nothing to be sorry or embarrassed about. Before we parted, Megan hugged me tightly. Please don't give up on us, okay? Even if you're mad at Mom. I promise, I said, my own eyes welling up. That evening, I steeled myself for what I knew would be the most difficult conversation yet, confronting my mother about her role in enabling Allison's behavior. I drove to her condo bringing dinner as a peace offering. Mom greeted me warmly until she realized Allison wasn't with me. I thought this was a family dinner, she said, her smile fading. It is, I replied. You and I are family too, Mom. As we ate, I carefully broached the subject. I need to talk to you about Allison and what's been happening. Mom immediately tensed. If this is more complaining about money, Jody, I don't want to hear it. Your sister is doing her best as a single mother. Did you know she opened credit cards in my name without my permission? That's identity theft, Mom. It's a crime. I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding, Mom said dismissively. Allison wouldn't do something like that. I pulled out the evidence I'd brought with me, the account statements, the delivery confirmations to Allison's address, everything. As Mom looked through it, her face paled. There's something else, I said quietly. When I was paying for Allison's car repair last month, I saw a receipt in her purse for a cash advance on your credit card. $500. Did you authorize that? Mom's expression told me everything. She said it was for Zach's school trip, she admitted. But the school called me last week about an outstanding payment for that same trip. As we talked further, a disturbing pattern emerged. Mom had been giving Allison money regularly, money from her fixed retirement income that she could ill afford to spare. And Allison had been assuring her that I would cover Mom's expenses if she ran short, without ever checking with me. She's been playing us against each other, Mom, using both of us. Mom's hand trembled as she set down her fork. I just didn't want to believe she could be so calculating. She's my daughter. I'm your daughter too, I said softly. And I've been enabling her just like you have. We both thought we were helping, but we've been making it worse. For her and for the kids. By the end of our conversation, Mom agreed that something had to change. She wasn't ready to completely cut off support to Allison, but she acknowledged the manipulation and promised to stop undermining my efforts to establish boundaries. It was a start. A small crack in the decades-old family dynamic that had allowed Allison to avoid consequences for so long. As I drove home, I felt the weight of years of financial and emotional burden beginning to lift. For the first time in my adult life, I was putting my own financial and emotional health first, not out of selfishness, but out of recognition that the current path was destroying all of us. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. How are you holding up? Better than expected, I replied. Taking control back feels right. Scary, but right. Proud of you, came his response. This took real courage. I smiled. It had taken courage. But it had also taken hitting absolute rock bottom to realize I couldn't climb back up while carrying everyone else. The next morning at exactly 7, my phone erupted with Allison's ringtone. I took a deep breath before answering. What the hell did you do? She screamed, not bothering with a greeting. Good morning to you too, Allison. The account is frozen. All the cards are declined. I have bills to pay, Jody. The kids need food. I've reported the fraudulent accounts you opened in my name, I said calmly, and I've frozen the joint account due to unauthorized use. You can't do this to us. Her voice cracked with panic. Megan has a field trip payment due today. Zach needs his medication refilled. I'm sorry about that. But this situation is the result of your choices, not mine. I'm going to tell everyone what you've done, she threatened. How you abandoned your own family. How you're punishing innocent children because you're so greedy you can't share your money. You can tell people whatever you want, Allison. The truth will speak for itself. I'll call my lawyer, she shouted. I'll sue you for every penny. I look forward to explaining the identity theft and credit card fraud to the court, I replied evenly. Make sure your lawyer knows about those details. After she hung up, I blocked her number. It was a temporary measure. I knew we'd have to communicate eventually, but I needed space to stay resolute in my decision. Less than an hour later, my doorbell rang. It was my mother, still in her bathrobe and slippers, hair uncombed. You have to fix this, she demanded as I let her in. Allison's hysterical. The kids won't have food or electricity. Mom, we talked about this last night. Allison has been manipulating both of us. That may be true, but cutting her off completely. Without warning, that's cruel, Jody. Without warning, I've been telling her for months that this arrangement isn't sustainable. I've offered to help her create a budget, find better employment, apply for assistance programs. She's refused every offer that doesn't involve me simply handing over money. Mom paced my living room. But to freeze everything at once. What about the children? Allison gets child support from Tyler. She receives government assistance. She has a part-time job. There's money for necessities if she prioritizes correctly. And if she doesn't, will you let your niece and nephew suffer to teach their mother a lesson? It was the question I'd been wrestling with myself. The last thing I wanted was for Zach and Megan to feel the consequences of their mother's actions. But I also knew that continuing to bail Allison out would only perpetuate the cycle. I've made arrangements for Megan's field trip payment directly with the school, I told Mom. And I've called the pharmacy about Zach's medication. Those things are covered. But I won't be Allison's personal bank anymore. Mom sank onto my couch, suddenly looking every one of her 68 years. I don't know how we got here, she said quietly. Where did I go wrong with her? It was the first time I'd ever heard my mother acknowledge that Allison's behavior might reflect failures in her upbringing. It was a moment of vulnerability I hadn't expected. It's not just you, Mom. It's all of us. We've all played our roles in this dynamic, but we can change it. It's not too late. After Mom left promising to stop pressuring me to fix things, I tried to focus on work. I had client meetings scheduled for the afternoon that I couldn't cancel. But my concentration was shattered by a barrage of text messages from Zach. Thanks for ruining everything, Aunt Jody, Mom says. We might get evicted because of you. You don't care if we're homeless. Thought family was supposed to help family. Each message was a knife twist exactly as intended. I recognized Allison's words coming through her son, another manipulation tactic. I didn't respond. Engaging would only escalate the situation, and anything I said would be twisted and reported back to Allison. Instead, I silenced my phone and headed to the office. At work, I struggled to focus during my client meetings. Laura, my boss, noticed my distraction and called me into her office afterward. Everything okay, Jody? You seem off today. I hesitated. I'd always kept my personal issues separate from work, presenting a polished professional facade, but the stress was clearly affecting my performance. I'm dealing with some family financial issues, I admitted. I'll get it under control. It won't affect my work going forward. To my surprise, Laura's expression softened with understanding rather than disappointment. Family financial problems are the worst kind, she said. I went through something similar with my brother years ago. Hardest thing I ever did was cutting him off financially. Really, I felt a glimmer of relief at finding someone who understood. He didn't speak to me for 2 years, Laura continued. Called me every name in the book. But eventually, he figured his life out. Now he thanks me for forcing him to stand on his own feet. I hope it works out that way with my sister, I said. Right now it feels like I've destroyed my relationship with my entire family. Setting boundaries isn't destruction, Laura assured me. It's clarification. Take whatever time you need to sort this out. Your job isn't in jeopardy. Her support meant more than she could know. As a single woman without children, my career was a central part of my identity. The thought of losing my professional standing on top of the family chaos had been a quiet, persistent fear. When I returned to my desk, I saw several missed calls from unknown numbers. I also had notifications from social media, tags and messages from mutual friends asking what was going on between Allison and me. Just as she'd threatened, Allison was spreading her version of events far and wide. I opted not to engage on social media. No good would come from airing family financial issues publicly. Instead, I responded privately to close friends with a simple message: I appreciate your concern. This is a private family matter that I'm not discussing publicly. I hope you'll respect that. Some understood. Others pressed for details, or worse, had already decided I was the villain in Allison's story. A few friends I'd known for years sent messages expressing disappointment in me for abandoning my sister and her children in their time of need. It hurt. But with each message, each missed call, each attempt to make me feel guilty enough to relent, my resolve actually strengthened. The manipulation tactics were so transparent now that I'd stepped back enough to see them clearly. By the end of the workday, I was emotionally exhausted, but still certain I'd made the right decision. I stopped at the grocery store on the way home, looking forward to a quiet evening alone to recharge. As I approached my condo building, I noticed a familiar figure sitting on the steps. It was Megan, a backpack at her feet. "Megan, what are you doing here? Does your mom know where you are?" She stood up, her face streaked with dried tears. "Can I stay with you tonight, please, Aunt Jody?" I ushered her inside, concern mounting. "Of course you can stay, but you need to tell me what's going on. Your mom must be worried sick." "She doesn't care," Megan said bitterly. "She's too busy trying to figure out how to get money. She told me I should ask the neighbors if they need a babysitter or house cleaner." Megan's voice dropped to a whisper. "She said I should especially ask Mr. Peterson next door because he's single and would probably give me money if I was extra nice to him." I felt physically ill at the implication. "She told you to do what?" "She didn't say it directly," Megan clarified, seeing my expression. "She just said I should wear my cute shorts and smile a lot, and he'd probably give me money for chores even if I didn't actually do much work." The suggestion that Allison would encourage her 15-year-old daughter to leverage her appearance for money from an adult man crossed a line I hadn't imagined even Allison would approach. "You did the right thing coming here," I told Megan firmly. "You don't have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable ever. Do you understand?" She nodded, relief evident in her posture. "Can I really stay? I brought my homework and everything." "Of course. Let's get you settled in the guest room." As Megan unpacked her backpack, I texted Allison a simple message: "Megan is with me. She's safe. We need to talk tomorrow." The response came immediately. "You had no right to take my daughter. I'm calling the police." I showed the message to Megan, who looked panicked. "I came here on my own. She can't call the police." "Can she?" "She won't," I assured her, hoping I was right. "But I should record what you told me about why you left just in case. Is that okay?" Megan agreed, and I made a simple audio recording of her explaining in her own words why she'd come to my condo and what her mother had suggested she do for money. It was a precaution I hated taking, but Allison's threat of police involvement had elevated the situation to a new level of seriousness. After getting Megan settled with dinner and homework, I called Ryan for advice. His experience as a therapist might help navigate this delicate situation. Document everything he advised after hearing the full story. If what Megan says is accurate, there could be child welfare concerns beyond the financial issues. "I don't want to tear their family apart," I said, conflicted. "You're not. These are consequences of Allison's choices, not yours. Your priority right now should be Megan's safety and well-being." After we hung up, I checked on Megan. She was already asleep in the guest bed, looking younger and more vulnerable than her 15 years. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would protect her even if it meant facing Allison's full wrath. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another of Allison's flying monkeys sent to berate me. But something made me check. "Jody, this is Tyler, Allison's ex. We need to talk about what's happening with the kids. Can you call me when you have a moment?" I stared at the message in surprise. Tyler and I had been cordial during his marriage to Allison, but had lost touch after the divorce. Allison had painted him as a deadbeat dad who abandoned his family, and while I'd had my doubts about her version of events, I'd never reached out to hear his side. Perhaps it was time to get the full picture from someone else who knew exactly what it was like to be on the receiving end of Allison's manipulations. The next morning, Megan and I shared breakfast before I drove her to school. She seemed lighter, more relaxed than I'd seen her in months. "Can I come back after school?" she asked hesitantly as I pulled up to the drop-off area. "Anytime," I assured her. "My home is always open to you. But we do need to work things out with your mom." "I know," Megan sighed. "Just not yet." "Okay. I need a break from all the drama." After dropping her off, I called Tyler from my car. "Thanks for reaching out," I said, when he answered. "Things have gotten complicated." "I heard," he replied. "Megan called me last night. She told me she's staying with you." That was news to me. "I didn't know she contacted you." "We talk regularly," Tyler explained. "Allison doesn't know. She tries to limit my communication with the kids, but Megan has her own phone that Allison doesn't know about." He paused, then continued cautiously. Jody, I know we haven't really talked since the divorce, and I'm sure Allison has told you her version of why our marriage ended. She said you left them for another woman, I admitted, that you refused to pay adequate support. Tyler's bitter laugh held no humor. That's not even close to the truth. Can we meet somewhere? There are things you should know, especially now that you're getting caught in Allison's financial web. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop near my office during my lunch break. As I drove to work, I wondered what revelations awaited me. Had I misjudged Tyler all this time? At noon, I spotted him immediately upon entering the coffee shop, still tall and athletic, but with new lines of stress around his eyes. He stood to greet me with an awkward hug. Thanks for meeting me, he said as we settled with our coffees. I've wanted to reach out for years, but I wasn't sure you'd believe anything I said about Allison. I might not have before I admitted, but recent events have opened my eyes. Tyler nodded. The credit card fraud? You know about that. Megan told me. But Jody, it's not the first time. He pulled out his phone and opened a document file. This is why I left Allison. Not for another woman. That was a lie she created to save face. He handed me his phone. On the screen was a credit report from 3 years ago showing multiple accounts I didn't recognize and a credit score in the low 500s. She did the same thing to you, I said, the realization dawning. Systematically. For years. I didn't find out until we tried to refinance our house and were denied because of my credit. By then, she'd racked up over $40,000 in debt in my name. I felt sick. Why didn't you press charges? The kids, he said simply. I couldn't bear the thought of them seeing their mother arrested. Instead, I filed for divorce and agreed to take on all the fraudulent debt as part of our settlement if she gave me significant parenting time. But she tells everyone you barely see the kids, that you're behind on support. Tyler's jaw tightened. I have documented proof of every payment. I've never been late, not once. As for visitation, she constantly creates emergencies when it's my time with them. Zach's sick. Megan has a project due. There's always some reason they can't come. Over time, she's alienated Zach from me almost completely. But not Megan, I noted. Megan sees through her mother's manipulations. She's the one who showed me the latest credit card statements Allison got in your name. She found them while looking for her birth certificate for a school trip. I absorbed this information, pieces clicking into place. So, when you left, Allison cleaned out our joint accounts, maxed out all legitimate credit cards, and told everyone I'd abandoned them financially. Sound familiar? It was exactly what she was doing now with me. The pattern was undeniable. I have documentation of everything, Tyler continued. Bank statements, credit reports, recorded phone calls where she admits to the fraud but threatens to deny it if I go public. I've kept it all in case I ever needed to protect myself or the kids. Would you be willing to share that documentation with me, I asked. That's why I wanted to meet, Tyler said. When Megan told me what was happening with you, I realized this pattern will never stop unless someone finally holds Allison accountable. I should have done it years ago. Maybe if I had, you wouldn't be going through this now. By the end of our lunch, Tyler had shared his entire digital archive of Allison's financial abuse. Years of evidence showing a calculated pattern of manipulation, fraud, and gaslighting. What are you going to do? He asked, as we prepared to leave. I'm still figuring that out. But knowing I'm not the first changes things. This isn't a one-time mistake or a desperate measure during hard times. It's a systematic pattern of behavior. Whatever you decide, Tyler said, know that I'll support you. For what it's worth, I think the kids, especially Megan, would be better off with more of your influence in their lives, not less. Armed with this new information, I called Hannah again. The family law attorney had advised me earlier about documenting the fraud, but now I had years of additional evidence showing a pattern. This strengthens your position considerably, Hannah said after I explained. It demonstrates that this isn't an isolated incident, but a deliberate, ongoing behavior pattern. If you decide to pursue legal action, this documentation will be crucial. I'm still hesitant about pressing criminal charges, I admitted. But I'm also concerned about Megan's welfare given what she told me about Allison suggesting she flirt with a neighbor for money. Hannah's voice sharpened. That crosses into potential child endangerment territory. Have you considered seeking temporary custody of Megan? The thought had crossed my mind, but hearing it suggested by a professional gave it new weight. Would that be possible? I'm just her aunt. Family members are always preferred for placement over foster care. With Megan's age, her own stated preference, and the documentation you have about financial exploitation and potential endangerment, you'd have a case. I'm not saying it would be easy, but it's an option to consider. After work, I picked up Megan from school as promised. On the way home, I gently broached the subject of her father. I met with your dad today, I said casually. He shared some information about the past that helps me understand what's happening now. Megan glanced at me. About the credit cards and stuff. Yes. He told me your mom did the same thing to him before they divorced. She nodded. I found some of those old statements last year when I was looking for my social security card for a job application. Dad didn't leave because he didn't love us. He left because Mom was stealing from him, right? That seems to be the case, I confirmed. Megan, I need to ask you something important. Would you be willing to tell a family court judge what you told me about your mom suggesting you flirt with the neighbor for money? Megan was quiet for a long moment. Are you going to try to take us away from Mom? Not both of you, I said, honestly. Zach is still very loyal to your mother, but I am concerned about your safety and well-being. What your mom suggested isn't okay. It puts you in a potentially dangerous position. I know, she said softly. And it's not the first time she's suggested stuff like that. Last year, when the power was about to be shut off, she joked that I should smile more at the electric company guy when he came to read the meter, maybe wear my cheerleading uniform. Each revelation made my stomach turn. This went beyond financial manipulation into something far more disturbing. If I did tell a judge, Megan continued, would I be able to live with you? At least for a while. That would be the goal. But it's a big decision and there would be a lot of family fallout. I want you to think about it carefully. That evening, as Megan worked on homework in the guest room, I made a difficult decision. It was time for a family intervention. Not just about the financial fraud, but about the entire toxic pattern that was harming everyone, especially the children. I texted my mother Tyler and even Allison proposing a meeting with a professional mediator. To my surprise, they all agreed, though Allison's response was curt. Fine. But Megan comes home first. I consulted with Ryan, who recommended a colleague specialized in financial therapy and family mediation. Dr. Sarah Patterson had experience with cases involving financial infidelity and family estrangement. She agreed to facilitate a session that weekend. A neutral third party can help manage emotions and keep the conversation productive, Ryan explained. It's not about attacking Allison, but about establishing truth and setting boundaries that protect everyone. The day before the scheduled intervention, I received an unexpected call from an unknown number. It was Zach. Aunt Jody. His voice was uncharacteristically small. Is Megan okay? She's fine, Zach. She's been staying with me. Mom said she ran away because you turned her against us. He sounded confused, torn between the narrative his mother had constructed and his concern for his sister. That's not what happened, I said gently. Megan needed some space and felt safe with me. You're welcome to visit any time. There was a long pause. Mom's been crying a lot. She says we might lose our apartment because you're being mean about money. The manipulation was clear, but I recognized that Zach was just a child caught in an impossible situation. I'm sorry you're worried, Zach. We're all meeting tomorrow to work things out. I promise I'm not trying to hurt you or your mom. She said you reported her to the police. No, I haven't done that, I assured him. But there are some serious issues we need to resolve as a family. Like me using your credit card. His voice wavered. I didn't know it was that much money. Mom said it was okay. For the first time, I heard genuine remorse in his tone. Perhaps the gravity of the situation was finally penetrating the shield Allison had built around him. We'll talk about all of that tomorrow, I said. But Zach, I want you to know something important. No matter what happens, I love you. That hasn't changed, and it won't change. After we hung up, I felt a glimmer of hope. If even Zach, who had been the most firmly under Allison's influence, was beginning to question her narrative, perhaps tomorrow's intervention had a chance of success. The morning of the intervention arrived with a mixture of dread and determination. Megan was nervous but resolute about attending. We arrived at Dr. Patterson's office, first followed by my mother, then Tyler. Allison was last, her face a mask of defensive hostility. Before we begin, Dr. Patterson said, once everyone was seated, I want to establish that this is a safe space for honest communication. There are no villains here, only people who care about each other, trying to resolve a difficult situation. Allison scoffed but remained silent. Jody has asked for this meeting because she's concerned about patterns of financial behavior that are affecting the entire family. Let's start there. I took a deep breath and laid out the facts as calmly as I could. The unauthorized credit card use, the accounts opened in my name, the similar pattern with Tyler years earlier, and my concerns about the children being drawn into unhealthy financial behaviors. To substantiate everything, I shared the documentation Tyler and I had compiled. Bank statements, credit reports, recorded conversations. The evidence was overwhelming and indisputable. As the reality of exposure settled over Allison, her demeanor shifted from defiance to panic. This is a setup, she accused. You're all ganging up on me because you think I'm the problem. What about my needs? What about what I've been through? Dr. Patterson redirected gently. Allison, your feelings and experiences are valid, but so are the experiences of everyone else in this room. The documentation shows a pattern of behavior that's causing harm, financial harm to Jody and Tyler, and emotional harm to your children. My children are fine, Allison insisted. Actually, Mom, we're not. Megan said quietly. It was the first time she'd spoken since the session began. I hate that you told Zach it was okay to take Aunt Jody's money. I hate that you lied about Dad abandoning us. And I really hate that you told me to flirt with Mr. Peterson for money. Allison blanched. I never said that. Yes, you did, Megan continued, her voice stronger. Just like you told me to wear my cheerleading uniform when the electric company guy came last year. You think I don't understand what you're suggesting, but I do. My mother gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Tyler's face hardened with barely controlled anger. The room fell into stunned silence. Dr. Patterson turned to Zach, who had been unusually quiet. Zach, how do you feel about all this? He looked at his lap. I didn't know it was such a big deal to use Aunt Jody's card. Mom said she'd pay it back eventually. And the other accounts, Dr. Patterson prompted gently. The ones in Jody's name. I didn't know about those, he admitted, glancing at his mother with confusion. That seems kind of like stealing. It was a crucial moment. Zach beginning to recognize the wrongness of actions his mother had normalized. Allison, seeing her control slipping, shifted tactics dramatically. Tears filled her eyes. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I know I've made mistakes. I just didn't know how else to provide for my children after Tyler left. I was desperate. I've never missed a support payment, Tyler countered calmly. And I left because you stole my identity and destroyed my credit just like you did to Jody. Dr. Patterson intervened as tensions rose. Let's focus on moving forward. What needs to happen for this family to heal and establish healthier patterns? By the end of the 3-hour session, we had the framework of a plan. 1. Allison would enter financial counseling and therapy to address the underlying issues driving her behavior. 2. She would acknowledge the fraud in writing and agree to a structured repayment plan for the debts she'd incurred in my name. 3. Tyler would petition for increased parenting time with Megan, potentially splitting her time between his home and mine for the immediate future. 4. I would hold off on pressing criminal charges as long as Allison complied with the agreement. 5. Our mother would attend family therapy sessions to address her enabling behavior. It wasn't perfect. Allison's agreement felt more like a response to being cornered than a genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing. But it was a start. The first step toward breaking a destructive pattern that had persisted for decades. As we prepared to leave, Allison pulled me aside. I do love my children, she said, her voice low. I never meant to put them in harm's way. I don't know how to live any other way. For the first time, I glimpsed something genuine beneath her manipulations, a flash of self-awareness and perhaps even remorse. That's what the therapy is for, I told her. This isn't just about money, Allison. It's about breaking cycles so the kids don't carry them forward. She nodded, a single tear tracking down her cheek. Do you think we can ever fix things between us? Be real sisters again? I don't know, I answered honestly. That depends on what happens next. But I hope so. Despite everything, you're still my sister. As I drove home with Megan beside me, I felt the first tentative stirrings of hope. The road ahead would be difficult. Family healing always is. But for the first time in years, we were at least on a path that acknowledged reality rather than enabling delusion. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. How did it go? Better than expected, I replied. The truth is finally out in the open. That's a start. 6 months passed, bringing changes I could never have anticipated when I first confronted Allison about the missing $8,200. True to the agreement from our intervention, Allison entered both financial counseling and personal therapy. The journey wasn't smooth. She missed sessions, made excuses, and threatened to quit multiple times when the work became difficult. But with firm boundaries from all of us, and the structured accountability built into our agreement, she gradually began to make progress. Tyler petitioned the court for a modified custody arrangement. With Megan's testimony about Allison's inappropriate suggestions regarding the neighbor, along with documentation of the financial fraud that had impacted both Tyler and me, the judge granted his request. Zach and Megan now split their time equally between their parents, with the provision that I would provide additional support and supervision during Allison's parenting time. The most surprising transformation was in Zach. Once removed from his mother's constant influence and exposed to more balanced perspectives on money and responsibility, he began to change. Tyler enrolled him in a teen financial literacy program I recommended, where Zach learned basic budgeting and the true value of money earned versus money taken. 3 months after the intervention, Zach approached me during a family dinner at my condo. "Aunt Jody, I've been saving up for my allowance," he said, handing me a small envelope. Inside was $78 in carefully counted bills and change. "It's not much, but I wanted to start paying back what I took. Dad's helping me make a payment plan." I blinked back tears at this gesture. "This means a lot, Zach. Thank you." "I'm really sorry," he said, meeting my eyes directly, for perhaps the first time since the whole ordeal began. "What I did was wrong. Mom said it was okay, but I knew better. I just didn't want to think about it." His willingness to take responsibility, even while acknowledging his mother's role, showed remarkable growth for a 12-year-old who'd been caught in a toxic financial pattern. Megan thrived with the new arrangements. She spent 3 nights a week at my condo, where we established routines around homework, cooking together, and open conversations about money, relationships, and her future goals. The rest of her time was split between Tyler's and Allison's homes. With distance and perspective, she developed more compassion for her mother while maintaining healthy boundaries. "Mom's trying," she told me one evening as we prepared dinner. "She still slips sometimes, like when she asked if you could help with her car payment yesterday. But when I pointed out that wasn't part of the agreement, she actually backed down instead of getting mad." Small steps, but significant ones. My mother's journey was perhaps the most difficult. Decades of enabling Allison couldn't be undone quickly. The family therapy sessions often ended with Mom in tears, facing the reality that her protection of Allison had actually harmed her in the long run. "I thought I was being a good mother," she confessed, during one particularly emotional session. "I didn't want Allison to struggle like I did. But all I did was teach her that someone would always clean up her messes." Mom began attending a support group for parents of adult children with financial problems, finding community and strength in others with similar experiences. Gradually, she learned to offer emotional support to Allison without financial bailouts. As for Allison herself, the journey was ongoing and imperfect. The structured repayment plan for the fraudulent accounts was in place with automatic transfers from her account to mine each month. She had found full-time work as an administrative assistant and was slowly building legitimate credit in her own name. There were setbacks. 3 months in, I discovered she'd asked our cousin for a loan using a fabricated medical emergency as the reason. When confronted by the family as a united front, she initially denied it, then broke down and admitted the truth. Instead of enabling her with silence or bailouts, we held firm to the established consequences. A month of weekly financial accountability meetings with her counselor, instead of the usual bi-weekly sessions. Our relationship as sisters was forever changed. The blind trust was gone, replaced by cautious verification and clearly defined boundaries. But something new was emerging too, a more honest connection based on reality, rather than manipulation and resentment. I'm learning that love isn't the same as giving money, Allison told me during a rare moment of genuine self-reflection. That's been hard. Money was always how I measured whether someone cared about me. Where do you think that came from? I asked. She considered the question seriously. Probably from how differently Mom treated us growing up. She gave me things when I was upset instead of helping me deal with my feelings. I learned to translate love into stuff, and when I didn't have money to get stuff, I found other ways. This insight, though simple, represented enormous growth from the sister who had once justified identity theft as family helping family. My own life transformed in unexpected ways, too. The crisis had forced me to confront my role as the family rescuer and the unhealthy pride I'd taken in being the responsible one everyone could rely on. Through my own therapy, I recognized that my financial enabling had been its own form of control, a way to feel needed and important in my family's eyes. Ryan and I grew closer through the ordeal. He witnessed my worst moments of doubt and anger, and instead of judging, he offered steady support and perspective. 6 months after the intervention, he proposed during a weekend hike to a waterfall we both loved. "You showed me what real courage looks like," he said as he offered the ring. "The strength to stand up for what's right, even when it hurts. I want to build a life with someone that brave." We set the wedding date for the following spring with plans for Megan to be a bridesmaid. Even Zach had asked if he could have a role in the ceremony. Today marked an important milestone, the first holiday gathering since the intervention where all branches of our fractured family would be together. I'd offered to host Thanksgiving, providing neutral territory where new boundaries and relationships could be tested. As I prepared the turkey that morning, I heard a knock. Opening the door, I found Allison standing there an hour early holding a bakery box. "I know I'm early," she said with uncharacteristic hesitancy. "I thought you might want help. And I brought pie. I paid for it myself." She added the last part with a small, self-aware smile that acknowledged our history. I invited her in, and we worked side by side preparing vegetables and setting the table. The conversation was sometimes awkward, occasionally tense, but fundamentally different from our interactions of the past. When she reached for my new serving platter, she asked first. When she mentioned being short on rent this month, she followed it immediately with, "But I've worked out a payment plan with my landlord. I'm not asking you for money." These small moments of respect for boundaries felt like victory. As everyone arrived, Tyler with the kids, my mother Ryan, and his parents, I watched the new family dynamic unfold with cautious optimism. There were awkward moments, certainly. Old patterns threatened to emerge, when Mom automatically served Allison first the preferential treatment, so ingrained she didn't even notice, until I gently redirected her. Zach momentarily slipped into his old role as his mother's defender when Tyler mentioned the upcoming court review of the custody arrangement. But there were beautiful new moments, too. Megan confidently shared news about her acceptance into an advanced math program. Zach proudly told everyone about the lawn mowing business he'd started in his dad's neighborhood to earn his own spending money. Mom complimented me on hosting without immediately comparing me to Allison. And Allison herself acknowledged Tyler's consistent support of the children without a single backhanded compliment or subtle dig. As we gathered around the table, I looked at these imperfect people, my family, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not because everything was fixed or because the past had been erased, but because we were finally facing our dysfunctions honestly and working to heal them. When it came time for the traditional sharing of gratitudes, I found myself saying I'm grateful for hard truths, for the courage to face them, and the wisdom to know that real love sometimes means drawing lines that can't be crossed. Allison met my eyes across the table. I'm grateful for second chances, and for a sister who cared enough to stop enabling me instead of just walking away. Later, as we cleared dishes and packaged leftovers, Ryan pulled me aside. "You know what I see when I look at your family now?" he asked. "What?" "Growth. It's messy and incomplete, but it's real. 6 months ago, this gathering wouldn't have been possible without screaming or manipulation." He was right. We were all growing, learning new ways to love each other that fostered health rather than dysfunction. The journey had been painful but necessary. That night, after everyone had gone and the house was quiet, I reflected on the winding path that had brought us here. It had started with a shocking betrayal. I just used your card for snacks and $8,200 gone overnight. But it had led to something invaluable. Truth boundaries, and the beginnings of genuine healing. The financial wounds would take time to fully repair. My credit score was slowly recovering. The fraudulent accounts were being paid down. The legal safeguards were in place to prevent future exploitation. But the real healing was happening in our relationships. We were learning, stumbling sometimes, that love without limits isn't love at all. It's enablement that harms everyone involved. True love is strong enough to say no when necessary, brave enough to face uncomfortable truths, and wise enough to know that immediate comfort often comes at the expense of long-term growth. As I drifted to sleep that night, I felt peace replacing the anxiety that had been my constant companion for months. The road ahead would have its challenges. Old patterns would threaten to reassert themselves. Trust would need to be rebuilt day by day, choice by choice. But for the first time in my adult life, I was confident that my family was on a healthier path. Not because I was carrying everyone's burdens, but because each person was learning to carry their own, with support, accountability, and genuine love that wanted the best for them, not just what was easiest. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't opening your wallet, but standing firm in the truth. Sometimes family loyalty means refusing to participate in harmful patterns even when walking away would be simpler. And sometimes the most valuable gift you can give someone who's drowning isn't to drown alongside them, but to stand firmly on shore, extending a hand that requires them to swim toward their own salvation. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with someone you love? What did you learn from the experience? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's sometimes the most loving choice we can make. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to speak your own truths, whatever they may be.